Easy and Slow Storytelling with Anthony Tan. For many people, Grab is just an app. Ride hailing, food delivery, digital payments. Something you tap without thinking. But behind Grab is a story about power, about regions, and about how ambition behaves in markets most of the world ignores. Anthony Tan did not start with technology. He started with frustration, and with a problem most outsiders never noticed. Transportation in Southeast Asia was broken, unsafe, unreliable, and invisible to global tech companies. For a long time, Southeast Asia was treated as an afterthought. Too fragmented, too poor, too complex, too local. Global platforms focused on the United States, China, Europe, India. This gap created opportunity, but only for someone who understood the region deeply. Anthony Tan grew up privileged. His family was wealthy, well-connected, politically influential in Malaysia. That background gave him access, but not direction. Expectations were high and vague. Success was assumed, not defined. He studied in the United States, at business school, far from Southeast Asia's traffic, far from its informal economies, far from its safety problems. And that distance mattered, because it sharpened contrast. The idea for Grab began with safety, not scale. Taxi drivers in Southeast Asia were unregulated. Payment disputes were common. Passenger safety was an afterthought. Anthony Tan saw this as unacceptable, unsolvable. The original concept was simple: a booking platform for licensed taxis. With traceability, with accountability, with a digital record. This was not disruption. It was order. Grab did not start by attacking incumbents. It partnered with them. Taxi drivers, regulators, local authorities. This choice slowed early growth, but built legitimacy, which mattered more in this region. Southeast Asia is not one market. It is dozens. Languages, currencies, regulations, cultural norms, payment habits, urban realities. Anthony Tan understood that copying Western playbooks would fail. Early on, Grab expanded cautiously, city by city, country by country, learning, adjusting, sometimes retreating. The company did not feel like a rocket ship. It felt like construction, slow, messy, grounded. Then competition arrived, aggressive, well-funded, global. Uber entered Southeast Asia with confidence, capital, brand recognition, a one-size-fits-all model. Many assumed the outcome was inevitable. But Uber misunderstood the terrain. Cash was dominant, smartphone penetration uneven, regulators unpredictable, infrastructure inconsistent. Anthony Tan knew these constraints intimately. Grab adapted. Uber pushed. Grab embraced cash payments early. It worked with local wallets, local banks, local merchants. What looked backward to Silicon Valley was pragmatic locally. Adoption followed reality, not ideology. At the same time, Grab expanded beyond rides. Food delivery, logistics, financial services. Not because of ambition, but because of necessity. The region lacked infrastructure. Grab had to build it. This was a critical shift. Grab stopped being a ride-hailing company. It became a platform, a daily utility. Transportation was just the entry point. The real goal was relevance. Anthony Tan believed platforms in Southeast Asia needed to be multi-service. Single-use apps would fail. Margins were thin. Customer loyalty was fragile. Ecosystems created stickiness and survival. This expansion required capital and partnerships. SoftBank, regional sovereign funds, local conglomerates. Grab raised aggressively, but not blindly. It framed itself as infrastructure, not disruption. That framing mattered. Governments tolerated Grab, sometimes supported it, sometimes challenged it, but rarely moved to destroy it. Grab positioned itself as a nation builder, not a foreign invader. Eventually, Uber exited Southeast Asia. Its operations were acquired. Grab won, but the victory was quiet. No celebration, no triumphalism. Anthony Tan understood this was only one phase. Winning rides was not winning the future. Southeast Asia's economies were still developing. Digital payments were underpenetrated. Small businesses were underserved. Grab saw a bigger role. Financial services became central. Payments, lending, insurance, tools for merchants, tools for drivers. Grab wanted to be the operating system for daily life, especially for those ignored by traditional banks. This ambition carried risk, regulatory scrutiny, execution complexity, capital intensity, building trust at scale. One mistake could trigger backlash. Anthony Tan became more cautious, more measured. Public perception shifted. Grab was no longer the underdog. It was the incumbent, with power, with influence, with responsibility. Criticism followed. Fees, driver treatment, market dominance. No platform escapes this stage. The decision to go public added pressure. Growth slowed. Profitability was questioned. Global investors compared Grab to Western peers. Often unfairly, often impatiently. Southeast Asia does not move at Silicon Valley speed. Anthony Tan faced a new challenge. Transitioning from expansion to discipline, from narrative to numbers, from founder energy to institutional execution. This phase is harder, less glamorous, less forgiving. Markets reward stories, then demand margins. Grab had to restructure, refocus, cut costs, make unpopular decisions. Through it all, Anthony Tan remained understated. Not a celebrity CEO, not a loud visionary. He spoke about ecosystems, about long-term impact, about responsibility, sometimes too abstract for investors, but consistent with his worldview. He sees Grab not as a startup, but as infrastructure in motion, something that must evolve with the region, not ahead of it, not above it, alongside it. The real test of Anthony Tan is not innovation. It is endurance. Can Grab remain relevant as competitors emerge? As regulation tightens? As consumers mature? As margins compress? Southeast Asia will not reward speed alone. It rewards patience, local understanding, political sensitivity, and resilience. Anthony Tan built Grab with these constraints in mind. The lesson of Anthony Tan is not about apps. It is about regional power. About building platforms where chaos is normal, where uniformity is impossible, and where trust must be earned slowly. He proved that global tech dominance is not universal, that local champions can win if they design for reality, not aspiration. The open question now is maturity. Can Grab become boring, reliable, profitable, and still essential? Because building is one thing, maintaining is another. Anthony Tan no longer competes against startups. He competes against expectations of governments, of investors, of millions who depend on his platform daily. His story is still unfolding. But one thing is clear. Grab was not built by copying Silicon Valley. It was built by rejecting it. Quietly, deliberately, and region by region. And that may be Anthony Tan's most important contribution. He showed that Southeast Asia does not need to be the next version of somewhere else. It can build its own systems, on its own terms, at its own pace, and still matter globally.